person, perhaps even find a relationship to the person so that my work gets done. Does it happen the electronic way? That's a question which I think some of us here in the office, in the hall, would also possibly not be able to answer. And in the villages, this is a big challenge. They don't really know what this IT enablement is doing for them. So one of the big reasons that I think we need to work on is awareness. The second is capacity building. But this capacity building is not just on the government side, it's also on the corporate side. Most of us who are working on projects in the rural parts of the country are running these projects like IT projects. They're actually citizen-centric projects. We need to understand the citizen's needs, what the citizen requires. We need to understand and change our model and method of working to that person's requirement. For this, we need a very different set of people. So there's a huge gap in capacity building, both in capacity in the corporate sector as well. And I think beyond these two, there is, of course, the big one which everybody's discussing here, which is change management. And that is something which has to happen within the government. So a lot of work has to be done working within the government, at all levels in the government, to try and assure them that this is actually in their interest as much as it is in the interest of the common citizen. I think that's about the three ones that I had.
You know, a lot of what I'm going to say is possibly already been said, but I would again, start from where my colleague from Spanco has left. If we were to use a metric like this to measure e-government, Kerala by far would be the best e-governed state in the country, because on all these statistics, Kerala is about twice or thrice the national average. And I can assure you that it is not the case that Kerala is the best e-governed state. So obviously there is need for a different metric for this. Second is, this metric developed by UN for want of, why this metric was at all developed was because of want of being able to measure something else. The easiest thing is to measure the number of PCs and the internet and broadband penetration. But today, this metric was not developed very long back, about 4 or 5 years back this was developed, but things have moved so fast that today we are actually not looking for delivery of services through the computer anymore. We are actually looking at a different mobile handheld devices, the way the whole thing is going to operate, and therefore possibly this needs a very, very quick revision to make assessment, even if we were to use a simplistic measurement device. So having said that, the point is very well taken. We need to still travel a long way in terms of achieving our goals in e-governance. But we should also not undermine the achievement that has been so far been achieved. Look at fields like banking or income tax or railways, or there have been some cases of huge usage of e-governance in various specific areas. There have been states which have started doing better than other states. And I would like to reiterate a couple of points which have already been made. I think have been repeatedly made. One about change management. And for change management, it's a well-accepted management principle that the commitment from the top leadership, if it's an organization, it has to be the CEO who has to drive the change. Unless CEO drives it, there is no change ever going to happen in most organizations. In case of government, wherever change management has taken place, and so rightly said by Suresh, RTI is a example which is so apt in this context. It has to be driven politically, and in that context, we cannot say that e-governance has enjoyed the same political mandate as some of the other change management issues. Second also, like Madam very rightly said, is the issue of language, which, of course, there is greater awareness. Kerala is one state which went on with a 100% e-literacy program, and we had one person who was made computer literate in every household. And we realized, funnily, after doing this, people are not using internet because there was no demand of service. There was nothing available on the internet for them. People don't know. Less than 90% of India, less than 10% of India speaks English. So, first of all, the services or the content available on internet is not in the local language, and therefore they don't make much use of this. Slowly that is changing now. The fonts have been formed in Unicode. The content is slowly increasing. And there needs to be a greater drive in creating local content and local services, services in local language. And lastly, I think something which possibly we have acutely felt, and I think possibly others also may have felt similarly, is in terms of capacity when it comes to e-governance. When we are talking of a huge the distributed requirement of state governments, local government, central government. There is a huge capacity requirement, and there is not enough capacity available as on today to meet all these requirements. So when we are, and in terms of quality of resources available keeps going down as the quantity of resources available becomes larger. So to meet in a very short time frame, which we are trying to do in this transitory stage, is we are finding it difficult to make available such large amount of capacity. So political commitment of top leadership, local content and local language, and capacity constraints, in my opinion, are the three main reasons. Thank you.
Most of the points that I thought have been already given by my predecessors. But let me again start with that statistics part, because I think that we should, while using the statistics, we should give our mind more. You see, I don't think that it's very correct to use the statistics of Singapore with India. Singapore is virtually a city-state. You can't use keep India's statistics besides Singapore's. I think it makes no sense. So while using the statistics, we should be very careful. I think the poverty is one of the most important reasons for our lacking in governance. Because poverty, it's an indirect, I think it's an indirect way I'm saying it. Poverty has been the reason for which we have not been able to take the last mile, make the last mile connectivities. If we can't make the last mile connectivities, e-governance makes little sense. You see, the last mile connectivity has been the most important thing in e-governance, but in the e-governance plan, the connectivity for which the central government is giving, it's up to the block level. But after the block, how the citizens are to be given the services. So in West Bengal, I'm from West Bengal, in West Bengal, we tried to give it through wireless. We had some experts, but they failed. Now we are using a new technology, and the project, it appears now that it is running successfully. It's on pilot mode. So, but the question is of money. What we think is that the government or the political leadership, they are not so much unaware of what the people want. They are quite aware. And that awareness gives them what to give more importance. So this is one of the reasons, I think, for which the e-governance is still lacking in India. The second is, of course, education. You see, the use of internet. Just in the schools, it has, in the public school, the use of computers has started. It's not still, it's still, I think, in our state, hardly 30% of the schools have computers. So 70% of the rural population virtually have no access, or in the school days doesn't touch a computer. So even if the computers come, the internets come to him, it will take a long time to make him familiar with it. And without the familiarity, it takes a generation to get familiarity with something. What I can give an example. I was director of employment just before I joined the IIT. And in West Bengal, at least we can say that the employment exchange data of 61 lakh was digitized very fast. It was the first of the total data where digitized almost 90%. But we found that in the employment exchanges, it is not being used properly. The data is not being. And later we found that even a group D, young group D, was using it better than the class 1 officer of, say, 50 years. What was Madam was saying that. We found that the young group Ds are using the computers in very efficient way. And these officers are now quite dependent on them. It's because of the